The day I became the most hated man in Lakeside Estates was the same day I became its most powerful. $500, that is what Karen Wellington and her homeowner association charged me for fishing with my grieving daughter. What they did not know was that I had 4 million reasons to fight back and enough spite to use every single one of them. If you are watching this video from your phone in the bathroom, to escape those mind-numbing homeowner association meetings, drop a comment right now telling me where you are hiding. I guarantee this story will keep you glued to your screen. My name is Remy Thornfra, and until 2 months ago, I was living what most would consider the American dream. I had spent 15 years building a career in venture capital and financial investment, eventually selling my stakes in several tech startups for enough money to retire at 42. But life has a way of reminding you that money is not everything. My wife Rachel lost her battle with cancer last year, leaving me to raise our 14-year-old daughter Solon. The grief nearly destroyed us both. The only thing that seemed to help was fishing, the last activity the three of us had enjoyed together before Rachel's health took its final turn. So when I decided we needed a fresh start, I specifically looked for a home near water, somewhere peaceful, somewhere we could heal. The Lakeside Estates community seemed perfect on paper: upscale homes, good schools, and a beautiful 6-acre lake nestled in the center of the development. The realtor mentioned there was a homeowner association, but assured me it was just the standard stuff: lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, the usual. I should have read between the lines when she hesitated before adding the homeowner association president Karen Wellington is dedicated to maintaining property value. I did not think much of it at the time. I dealt with difficult personalities throughout my career. How bad could one neighborhood bureaucrat be? I found out exactly how bad on a quiet Saturday morning in April. Solon and I had been at the community lake for about an hour, fishing off the small wooden dock. It was the first time I had seen my daughter genuinely smile in weeks. She had just caught her second bluegill and was carefully unhooking it when a sharp voice cut through the peaceful morning. "Excuse me, but what exactly do you think you are doing?" The woman approaching us was around late 50s, impeccably dressed in what looked like expensive athleisure wear, her highlighted blonde hair styled in what I can only describe as the universal "I want to speak to the manager" haircut. She carried a tablet and wore an expression that suggested she just caught us vandalizing public property. "Good morning," I replied, trying to keep my tone friendly, "just enjoying some fishing with my daughter." I extended my hand. "I am real Thorncraftoft. We moved into the Sycamore Drive house about 2 months ago." She ignored my outstretched hand completely, instead tapping aggressively on her tablet. "Mr. Thorncraftoft, fishing is explicitly prohibited in our community lake. This is a direct violation of homeowner association regulations." "I am Karen Wellington, homeowner association president." She said this last part as though announcing herself as royalty. "I will have to issue a violation notice. The fine is $500. I felt Solon freeze beside me. "There must be some mistake," I said calmly. The realtor specifically mentioned fishing as one of the community amenities. It was a selling point for us. Karen's thin smile did not reach her eyes. "The regulation was amended last month. All residents were notified via email. Ignorance of the rules does not exempt you from following them." She turned her tablet toward me, showing a document with the heading "Amendment to Recreational Use of Community Lake." The date showed it had been approved just 4 weeks earlier. "We never received any notification about this," I protested. "I personally oversee all communications. The email was sent to every household," Karen replied with absolute certainty. "Perhaps you should check your spam folder, though I cannot be responsible for residents who do not bother to read official communications." I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my voice level. "May I ask why fishing was suddenly banned? This lake is clearly stocked with fish." I could see several bass swimming near the shallow edges of the water. Karen glanced dismissively at our fishing equipment. "Environmental and safety concerns? The hooks can injure wildlife, and we have had complaints about the smell of fish and bait disturbing residents who are trying to enjoy the lake views from their homes." She looked pointedly at our small tackle box. "Not everyone wants to see this sort of activity while they are having their morning coffee on their patios." Something in her tone made me take a closer look at Karen Wellington, the way she surveyed our modest fishing gear, the slight curl of her lip. This was not just about rules. We are being very careful, I said. Solon and I always practice catch and release, and we clean up completely when we are done. Karen's expression hardened. Mr. Thorncraft, perhaps you do not understand how things work here at Lakeside Estates. We maintain certain standards in this community. This is not a public fishing hole. The residents who have lived here for years expect a particular atmosphere. She glanced at Solon, then back to me. New residents sometimes struggle to adapt to our community culture, people who are more accustomed to, shall we say, different types of neighborhood. The implication was crystal clear, and I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest. I was about to respond when I heard a small sniffle beside me. Solon had tears welling in her eyes. This was supposed to be our healing place, a spot where for just a little while, she could forget that her mother was gone. And now this woman was ruining it with her thinly veiled condescension. We will pack up, I said quietly, placing my arm around Simone's shoulders. Please email me the details of the fine and the full updated regulations. Karen's smile returned, victorious. Excellent, I am glad we understand each other, and do check your email more carefully in the future, Mr. Thorncraft. We would not want any further misunderstandings. She turned and walked away, her designer sneakers hardly making a sound on the manicured grass. As we gathered our equipment, Solon wiped her eyes. Dad, why was that lady so mean? We were not hurting anything. I did not have a good answer for her, at least not one that was appropriate to share with a 14-year-old. Some people just like rules more than they like people, sweetheart, I said finally. Let us go home and have some lunch. Later that day, after checking my email including spam folders, and finding no notification about the fishing ban, I started researching our homeowner association more thoroughly. What I discovered was illuminating. Karen Wellington had been homeowner association president for 8 consecutive years, her day job owner of a small but exclusive real estate company specializing in luxury community properties. I also found several social media posts from Karen herself, hosting waterfront parties at the very same lake where she had just fined me for fishing. Many of these events featuring alcohol and loud music, apparently exempt from the concerns about community atmosphere. Most revealing was a clause buried deep in the homeowner association documentation. The lake was actually listed as a common property amenity, belonging to all residents. There was no legal distinction suggesting the homeowner association had absolute control over its use. As I looked out my window toward the lake that evening, I saw Karen and what appeared to be a group of friends, gathered at a lakeside gazebo, wine glasses in hand, laughing. So they want to play the rules game, I murmured to myself. Fine, but first I need to find out who actually owns this piece of water. The following morning I ran into an older gentleman, walking his dog past my house. He introduced himself as Merrick Henderson, a retired attorney who lived 3 doors down. When I mentioned my encounter with Karen Wellington, his friendly expression immediately darkened. "I have met our neighborhood dictator," said with a grimace. Let me guess, she quoted some obscure regulation and issued a fine. When I nodded, Merrick shook his head. Karen has been running this place like her personal thief for years. Most people just pay the fines and keep their heads down. He glanced around and lowered his voice. If you are interested in some background information, why do you not come by for coffee sometime? I have got quite a collection of homeowner association horror stories. I took him up on his offer that same afternoon. Merrick's home was filled with law books and framed photographs of what I assumed were former colleagues or clients. Over exceptionally good coffee, he shared what he knew about our community's power structure. Here is what most residents do not realize, Merrick explained, pulling out a folder filled with documents. The lake is not actually owned by the homeowner association, it is owned by Meridian Development Corporation, the original developers of this community. They leased recreational rights to the homeowner association for a 30-year term, which is why Karen and the board can set usage rules. But he tapped a document with a highlighted date that lease expires in less than 2 months. This caught my attention immediately. What happens then? Technically, Meridian could renew the lease, sell the lake outright to the homeowner association, or find another buyer entirely. Most residents have no idea. They think the homeowner association owns everything in the community. Merrick leaned forward. But here is where it gets interesting. I have heard through some contacts that Meridian is facing financial difficulties and might be looking to liquidate assets quickly, and our friend Karen knows this. Over the next hour, Merrick and I dug deeper into public records. What we discovered was a pattern of manipulative behavior by Karen that went far beyond petty rule enforcement. Through various shell companies connected to her real estate business, she had been quietly acquiring properties throughout the neighborhood whenever residents were forced to sell, often after being hounded out by excessive homeowner association fines and violations. And now she has after a bigger game, Merrick concluded. From what I have gathered, she has been in private talks with Meridian to purchase the lake property herself, not for the homeowner association, mind you, for her own real estate development company. Word is she plans to reduce lake access and build additional luxury homes on part of the shoreline. This explained the sudden fishing ban. It was not about environmental concerns at all, it was about gradually restricting lake usage to prepare for a complete change in ownership. Merrick introduced me to another ally, Samuel Washington, a retired local bank owner and one of the few residents who openly opposed Karen's leadership. Samuel, an elegant African-American man in his 60s, had experienced Karen's subtle discrimination firsthand. Samuel invited us to his study the following evening, where he revealed a meticulously maintained database tracking homeowner association activities over the past decade. I started this as a simple record-keeping exercise, he explained, gesturing to his computer screen filled with spreadsheets. But it quickly became apparent that there was a pattern to Karen's enforcement actions. The data was undeniable. Homeowners of color received violation notices at nearly 3 times the rate of their white neighbors. New residents were cited for infractions that long-standing homeowners routinely got away with. And most tellingly, properties that eventually sold at below market rates due to compliance issues frequently ended up in the hands of shell companies with connections to Wellington properties. Her own real estate operation is clever, Samuel explained, pulling up property records. She never purchases directly. Instead, she uses a network of limited liability companies, Lakeside Investments, Wellington Holdings, Sierra Vista Properties, all ultimately tracing back to her, but obscured enough to avoid obvious connection. He showed me documentation of 6 different homes that had been purchased this way over the past 5 years, all following the same pattern: excessive homeowner association violations, declining property values, desperate sales, and eventual high property resales after cosmetic renovations. Merrick nodded grimly. The lake is her endgame. Meridian Development has been struggling since the recession. They overextended on commercial properties and have been quietly liquidating residential assets to cover debts. The lake was never meant to be permanent green space. The original development plan from 30 years ago actually included lakefront condominiums, but environmental regulations at the time prevented construction. Those regulations have since been relaxed, Samuel added. With the right connections at City Hall, which Karen certainly has, permits could be issued for limited development. A half-dozen luxury lakefront homes could easily bring in $7 or $8 million in revenue. My professional interest was piqued. Tell me more about Meridian's financial situation, I said. As a former venture capitalist, I was well versed in recognizing distressed assets and opportunity. Over the next few days, Samuel connected me with former banking colleagues who provided discreet insights into Meridian's precarious position. The company had taken on substantial debt, financing a commercial development that had fallen through when anchor tenants pulled out during the pandemic. Their credit lines were maxed, and they were quietly selling off land holdings to avoid bankruptcy. The lake property, valued at roughly $300,000, was one of their few remaining unencumbered assets. Meanwhile, Merrick had been quietly arranging small gatherings with other disgruntled residents we met in rotating locations, sometimes at Samuel's home, sometimes at the local library's private rooms, once even in the back room of a sympathetic resident's bakery shop. The stories shared a disturbing pattern. She cited me for excessive holiday decorations the day after I spoke against her at the town council meeting. James Morris, a retired teacher, told our small group, "I have had the same Christmas lights for 15 years, but suddenly they violated some obscure brightness ordinance. My foster children were banned from the community pool for being too loud," shared Maria Gonzalez, a healthcare worker whose 3 foster kids had been swimming when Karen's grandchildren wanted to use the pool. When I asked which rule they had broken, she said it was her executive decision as homeowner association president. Diana Winters, a young widow who had moved to the community just before me, described how Karen had personally led an inspection committee through her backyard, claiming to check for mosquito breeding grounds. 2 days later, I received violation notices for 5 different issues, all things that my neighbors have but were not cited for. When I pointed this out, Karen suggested that perhaps this community is not the right fit for someone in your situation. Each story revealed Karen's tactical approach: isolate potential opposition, apply selective pressure through homeowner association mechanisms, and either force compliance or drive people out. Those who stayed learned to keep their heads down. Those who fought back found themselves facing escalating harassment. Through these meetings, we identified potential allies throughout the community. Samuel created a secure messaging group where residents could share experiences and information without fear of retaliation. We were building what amounted to an underground resistance within our own neighborhood. I also began researching Karen's personal financial situation. As an investor, I knew how to read between the lines of property records and business filings. What I discovered surprised me. Despite her carefully cultivated image of success, Wellington Properties was highly leveraged. Karen had taken out multiple lines of credit against her existing properties, likely to maintain her lavish lifestyle and fund her attempts to acquire new properties. If the lake development plan fell through, she would be in serious financial trouble. She is not just doing this for profit, I explained to Merrick and Samuel during one of our strategy sessions. She is doing it out of necessity. Based on these financial records, she is overextended. The lake development is not just an opportunity for her, it is financial survival. This information changed our calculus. We were not just facing a neighborhood tyrant, we were dealing with someone fighting for their economic life. That made her more dangerous, but also more vulnerable. At Samuel's suggestion, I also reached out to Robert Chin, a real estate broker who had insider knowledge about the lake property in the local market. We met at a coffee shop 20 meters away to ensure privacy. Karen has been trying to put together financing to purchase the lake property for about $300,000, Robert confirmed, keeping his voice low. Despite the distance from our community, Meridian Development is in financial free fall and needs to close quickly. They have given her a 60-day exclusive negotiation period, but they are so desperate that they might accept a better offer if it came with immediate payment. Robert also revealed something even more interesting. Karen's real estate empire is mostly smoke and mirrors at this point, he explained. Wellington Properties looks impressive on paper, but she is leveraged to the hilt. She has been using her homeowner association connections and social network to maintain the appearance of success, but the truth is she is about 3 bad months away from serious trouble. That is why she is so aggressive about this lake deal. She needs a big win to keep her creditors at bay. With this information, I began formulating a plan. As a venture capitalist, I had specialized in identifying distressed but potentially valuable assets, exactly what this lake property represented. I had the capital to make an immediate all-cash offer that would be extremely attractive to a cash-strapped developer like Meridian. The question was timing, when to make my move for maximum effectiveness. We need to wait until Karen has fully committed herself publicly to this project, Samuel advised. Let her announce the special assessment for lake improvements. Let her put her reputation on the line with the community and with her creditors. Then we pull the rug out from under her, Merrick agreed. The more resources and political capital she expends before we make our move, the more devastating the impact will be when we succeed, and the more likely the community will turn against her when they realize they have been manipulated. As our coalition grew and our plans developed, we maintained absolute secrecy about our ultimate strategy. To the outside world, and especially to Karen's network of informants within the community, we appeared to be simply a group of disgruntled residents documenting homeowner association overreach. Karen clearly knew we were meeting, as evidenced by the sudden increase in random rule enforcement against those associated with our group, but she could not know our true objective. With the information gathered from our various sources, we were ready to move to the next phase of our plan. Robert arranged a discreet meeting with Tom Branson, the Meridian executive. Handling the lake property sale, as I prepared for this crucial conversation, I knew we were approaching the point of no return in our battle against Karen Wellington. The stakes were high, not just for me and Solon, but for the entire community. It was time to see if our careful preparation would pay off. The meeting with Tom Branson took place at a private room in a downtown law office, far from curious eyes in our community. As Robert had mentioned, Meridian was indeed desperate to offload assets quickly. "Look, I will be straight with you," Tom said after we had covered the preliminaries. "We have given Wellington Properties a 60-day exclusive negotiation window, but there is a clause that allows us to entertain other offers if they come with guaranteed rapid closing. Karen is still trying to pull together investors and financing, but frankly we needed the cash yesterday." "What is her offer at?" $300,000, paid over an 18-month period with a complicated financing structure, Tom replied, his frustration evident. "Our chief financial officer is pushing us to liquidate non-core assets immediately to shore up our commercial development downtown." I nodded thoughtfully, then made my move. "I can offer $350,000 all cash, with closing in 7 days." Tom's eyebrows shot up. "That would certainly get my board's attention," he said, clearly surprised by the directness of my offer. "But I should warn you, Karen Wellington has friends in the local government. She will not take this lying down." "I am counting on it," I replied with a smile. 2 days later, I had a preliminary agreement in hand, contingent only on a standard environmental assessment that could be completed within the week. To maintain secrecy, the purchasing entity was listed as Thorncraft Holdings Limited Liability Company, a company I created specifically for this transaction. Unless Karen personally investigated the corporate registration, she would not immediately connect it to me. As I built my coalition and investigated my options, Karen apparently caught wind of my activities. Suddenly I began receiving violation notices for issues that had never been mentioned before: improper weed control, unauthorized landscaping materials, mailbox height violations, and even a citation for my garage door being the wrong shade of taupe, despite being painted the exact color approved when I moved in. The fines began piling up, $100 here, $200 there. Within 2 weeks, I had accumulated nearly $2,000 in violations. When I tried to contest them, my appeals were mysteriously lost or denied without explanation. It was clear that Karen was using every tool at her disposal to pressure me into conformity. Then came a particularly troubling incident. Solon had left her bicycle in our driveway while running inside to answer a phone call. Within 15 minutes, a violation notice appeared on our door, complete with photographs of the infraction. Someone had been watching our house, waiting for any minor slip-up to pounce on. The systematic nature of the harassment was becoming increasingly obvious. The targeting was not limited to just me. Anyone seen associating with our group soon found themselves subject to similar treatment. Maria Gonzalez received a citation for her lawn being a 1/4 inch too high, measured precisely by Karen herself. James Morris was fined for a bird feeder that had been in his yard for over a decade, but suddenly violated an obscure aesthetic guideline. Diana Winters received a notice about improper trash disposal when her recycling bin was 6 inches too close to her garage. It was a clear campaign of intimidation, but it was having the opposite effect than Karen intended. Instead of scaring people away from our coalition, her heavy-handed tactics were driving more residents to our secret meetings. With each new absurd violation, another neighbor joined our messaging group. By the 3rd week, we had representatives from nearly 30 households, over a 1/4 of the community. The final straw came when my daughter returned from school in tears. "The kids at school are saying we are troublemakers," she sobbed. Brianna said her mom told her we are trying to bring down property values, and that we do not belong here. Brianna's mother, I discovered, was one of Karen's closest allies on the homeowner association board. The battle had now extended to targeting my child. That night after Solon was asleep, I called Merrick. "I am considering selling the house and moving," I admitted. "This is affecting Solon too much." "That is exactly what she wants," Merrick replied firmly. "Karen has done this to at least 6 other families I know of. She hounds them with violations until they sell, usually at below market value because of the problems with the property, and then her real estate connections snap them up. Do not give her that satisfaction. He was right, of course. Walking away would be letting Karen win, and worse, it would be teaching Solon the wrong lesson about standing up to bullies. That same evening I received word that the environmental assessment on the lake had come back clean, and Meridian's board had accepted my offer. The paperwork was ready to sign. Later that night, while reviewing the homeowner association governing documents again, I discovered something crucial. Karen's proposed special assessment to improve lake amenities, which everyone understood was her way of raising funds to purchase the lake, required 75% homeowner approval, not the simple majority she had claimed at the meeting. She was attempting to bypass the homeowner association's own rules, confident that no one would challenge her. That was the moment everything crystallized for me. They have brought this fight to my daughter, I said to myself as I closed my laptop. Time to show them. What happens when you anger someone who has spent their career learning how to break down and rebuild systems? The next morning, I withdrew $350,000 from my investment accounts, approximately 15% more than Karen's offer for the lake property. I called Samuel Washington, who not only encouraged my plan, but offered to loan me another $50,000 to ensure we had enough leverage. Within 48 hours, I had signed all the paperwork with Meridian Development. The lake, all 6 acres of it, including the surrounding 10-foot shoreline perimeter, now belonged to me. Not the homeowner association, and certainly not Karen Wellington. What made the transaction particularly sweet was the timing. The day after I closed the deal, Karen had scheduled a special homeowner association meeting to announce her vision for the future of our lake. She had even hired a local architecture firm to create renderings of proposed improvements, which, based on the preview I had seen on the community bulletin board, included reducing the actual water area by about 20% to make room for a members-only lakeside lounge. That would have conveniently eliminated the main fishing spots. I kept this information absolutely confidential, sharing it only with Merrick and Samuel. Meanwhile, Karen was becoming increasingly aggressive, holding an emergency homeowner association meeting to announce a special assessment for critical community improvements, $50 per month additional fees from each household, supposedly for lake maintenance, but actually to build her war chest for the purchase. At the meeting, Karen stood at the podium with a PowerPoint presentation titled Elevating Lakeside Estates, a Premier Vision. She spent 20 minutes outlining how the strategic reimagining of the lake area would enhance property values and community prestige. What she did not mention, of course, was that her real estate company would be handling the development and sales of the new lakefront properties she planned to build. Karen also launched a thinly veiled smear campaign against me. Without naming me directly, she spoke about certain new elements in our community who do not understand our values, and financially unstable individuals trying to undermine property values. Samuel bravely stood up to defend me, only to have Karen publicly humiliate him by bringing up a long-resolved tax issue from his past. I find it interesting, Karen said with mock sweetness, that Mr. Washington feels qualified to lecture us about community standards, when he himself had to negotiate with the Internal Revenue Service over unpaid taxes just a few years ago. Perhaps we should focus on getting our own houses in order before criticizing others. It was a low blow. Samuel had indeed faced an audit, but it was due to a clerical error that had been fully resolved. The way Karen framed it, however, made it sound like he was a tax cheat. The meeting devolved further when Safra Duskland tentatively suggested that perhaps a community vote should be taken before changing lake regulations so drastically. Karen fixed her with an icy stare. Safra, I believe the flower shop lease renewal is coming up soon, is it not? It would be a shame if there were any complications with that. The threat was barely concealed, and Safra immediately backed down. As I watched this public display of intimidation, I felt a strange sense of calm. Karen had no idea that her grand plans had already been derailed, that the lake she was presenting as the centerpiece of her vision no longer belonged to Meridian and would never belong to her. The satisfaction of knowing what was coming almost made up for the months of harassment. Meanwhile, Karen had used her connection with Mayor James Wilson to create administrative pressure on me. Suddenly, my home was subject to random safety inspections, and questions were raised about building permits for renovations, The previous owner had completed years ago. The mayor himself did not dirty his hands directly, but his building inspector, a cousin of Karen's by marriage, was suddenly very interested in the structural integrity of my deck. The pressure was working. When Solon came home crying for the third time in 2 weeks, because classmates were excluding her based on rumors about our family, I nearly gave in. But then I received the phone call I had been waiting for. Meridian's lawyer confirmed that Karen had just been informed that the lake property had been sold to an anonymous third-party investor and that all negotiations with her were terminated. Within hours, Karen was on my doorstep, her carefully maintained composure visibly cracking. "What did you do?" she demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "I know you have been talking to Meridian. Did you sabotage my deal?" I smiled pleasantly. "I have no idea what you are talking about, Karen, though I did hear the lake property was sold. I hope the homeowner association has a good relationship with the new owner." Her eyes narrowed. "This is not over. The homeowner association has a binding recreational use agreement. Whoever bought that lake cannot change access without our approval." "I think you should check the terms of that agreement," I replied calmly. "From what I understand, it expires in less than 30 days, and renewal is at the sole discretion of the property owner." Karen's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. "The community will not stand for this. We will sue for right of access." "Good luck with that," I replied, still smiling as I closed the door. The next 24 hours were fascinating to observe. Karen called an emergency homeowner association board meeting, closed to the general community. Through our network, we learned she was frantically trying to identify the new owner and develop strategies to maintain control of the lake. She even enlisted Mayor Wilson to look into possible zoning restrictions or eminent domain claims, all of which Merrick assured me were legally baseless, given the property's history and designation. Over the next week, Karen grew increasingly desperate. She convened an emergency legal committee meeting, claiming the homeowner association would fight to maintain their rights to the lake. The mayor began making noise about zoning regulations and public access requirements, though as Merrick confirmed, none of these had any legal standing given the property's private status. Meanwhile, I quietly met with a water quality expert and a local conservation organization to assess the lake's ecological health. What they found was concerning. Years of unregulated landscaping chemicals from surrounding properties had created abnormal algae growth, and the fish population was showing signs of stress. The homeowner association had been completely neglecting the actual environmental health of the lake, while using environmental concerns as an excuse to restrict activities like fishing. I also consulted with a security expert about installing cameras and creating a proper management plan for the property. Everything was being prepared for the moment when I would reveal myself as the new owner. The turning point came when Karen decided to make a bold statement. She organized a massive lakeside party for all original homeowners, conspicuously excluding the newer residents, to assert our community rights to our lake. The event was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, complete with catered food, music, and prominently displayed wine bars at each end of the lake. What Karen did not know was that I had already filed the necessary paperwork to terminate the recreational use agreement early, citing multiple violations of the maintenance terms. My attorney had confirmed that the homeowner association's neglect of water quality standards provided ample grounds for immediate termination. Though the agreement would have expired in less than a month anyway, I decided this was the perfect moment for the big reveal. As Karen's party reached full swing, with about 60 residents drinking and socializing around the lake, I arrived with Merrick, Samuel, and 2 unexpected guests, my real estate attorney and a local police officer I had briefed on the situation. Walking calmly into the center of the gathering, I picked up the microphone Karen had been using for announcements. "Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are enjoying this beautiful day at the lake." Karen immediately rushed over, attempting to take the microphone. "This is a private community event. You were not invited." I held on to the microphone firmly. "Actually, Karen, I think there has been some confusion about who should be inviting whom." I nodded to my attorney, who handed me a document. "As the legal owner of this lake and all surrounding property within 10 feet of the shoreline, I am informing you that you are all currently trespassing on private property." The crowd fell silent. Karen's face flushed deep red. What are you talking about? This is homeowner association. No, Karen, it never was. It belonged to Meridian Development until 3 days ago, when I purchased it outright. I held up the deed for everyone to see. And effective immediately, I am terminating the recreational use agreement that is set to expire in 28 days anyway. I gestured to the police officer. I have asked Officer Reynolds here to help ensure an orderly departure from my property. You have 15 minutes to gather your belongings and leave the premises. Karen's face was a study in shock, like someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water over her. You cannot do this, the community has rights. Actually, I can, and I have, I replied calmly. And Officer Reynolds has a trespassing complaint ready to file if necessary. But I am sure it will not come to that. After all, Karen, you have always been such a stickler for following the rules. As the crowd began murmuring in confusion, I continued. For those wondering, this is what happens when you allow someone to abuse power unchecked for years. Consider this a lesson in consequences. The party dispersed quickly, with many guests shooting accusing looks at Karen as they left. Several people approached me privately, expressing a mix of shock and surprisingly respect. About time someone stood up to her, one long-time resident whispered as he passed. This has been a long time coming. Within the week, I had private property no trespassing signs installed around the lake perimeter and hired security to patrol the area 24 hours a day. I also organized a small press conference with the local newspaper to announce my plans to convert the lake into a natural fish conservation area and educational space for children to learn about local ecosystems. The lake has been environmentally neglected for years, I explained to the reporters. Our water quality tests show concerning levels of phosphates and nitrates from lawn chemicals. My team of environmental experts will be implementing a restoration plan to return this beautiful resource to a healthy state. The community reaction was mixed, but increasingly favorable. As details of Karen's planned development leaked out, many residents who had initially been upset about losing lake access became supportive when they learned about her intention to build private homes on part of the shoreline. The revelation that she had been planning to profit personally from community property shifted public opinion dramatically. Karen was livid. She attempted to sue me for destruction of community value, but her case was dismissed almost immediately when my attorney presented the clear property deed and expired access agreement. She then tried to rally the homeowner association to implement punitive measures against me, additional fines, restrictions, even attempting to force a lien on my property, but many residents were beginning to question whose interests she really represented. The tide truly turned when Safra Duskund finally found the courage to speak up at a homeowner association meeting. I have been on this board for 3 years, she said, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger, and I have watched Karen manipulate regulations, target specific homeowners, and divert homeowner association funds to pet projects that primarily benefit her friends' properties. Last year, we spent $80,000 to renovate the North Side Park that only serves about 10 homes, all owned by Karen's friends, while rejecting basic playground equipment for the main park used by dozens of families. Safra's stand inspired others. At the next homeowner association meeting, several longtime residents spoke up about various abuses they had witnessed but been afraid to mention. The floodgates had opened, and years of pent-up frustration with Karen's leadership poured out. A motion was proposed to audit all homeowner association finances for the past 5 years. More board members began to question Karen's leadership. As financial records were scrutinized and irregularities emerged, the community was fracturing, but not along the lines Karen had expected. Instead of uniting against me, many residents were beginning to see the homeowner association leadership as the real problem. As more residents began to question Karen's leadership, I announced a special program, free fishing passes for all children in the community. There was just one exception. Children of current homeowner association leadership would not be eligible until their parents resigned from the board. It was petty perhaps, but effective. The most satisfying moment came when several residents who had previously sneered at me alongside Karen started showing up at my door asking if their children could possibly be granted fishing passes. Some even began openly criticizing Karen, the same people who had been her staunch supporters weeks earlier. The social dynamics had completely reversed. My son really wants to learn to fish, admitted Veronica Palmer, who had vocally supported Karen at homeowner association meetings. He says your daughter mentioned a junior conservation program. Her discomfort was palpable as she stood on my doorstep, the same woman who had deliberately turned away when I greeted her at the community pool just weeks earlier. Yes, we are starting an educational program for kids, I confirmed. It focuses on ecology, conservation, and sustainable fishing practices. Solon is helping to organize it. I paused deliberately. Of course, it is only open to families who are not currently represented on the homeowner association board. Veronica's expression was a fascinating mixture of frustration and calculation. I have been reconsidering my position on the board lately. The recent decisions seem quite concerning. How interesting, I replied neutrally. Well, if your situation changes, please let me know. The program starts next Saturday. Within 3 days, Veronica had publicly resigned from the homeowner association board citing personal reasons. 2 other board members followed suit within the week. Karen grew desperate. She spread rumors that the lake was polluted and dangerous, claims I quickly debunked by publishing professional water quality test results, showing it was actually cleaner than when under homeowner association management. Then she made her most desperate move yet, attempting to bribe Merrick Henderson with promises to clear all his past homeowner association violations, and offering him a position on a new board once she resolved the lake situation. What she did not know was that Merrick recorded the entire conversation. I can make all those violation notices disappear, Merrick, Karen's voice said clearly on the recording, and there would be a place for you on the restructured board, with a stipend of course. All you need to do is help convince Thorncrafthoff to sell the lake to the homeowner association, tell him about the environmental liabilities, the insurance costs, scare him a little. Merrick played the recording for me with a satisfied smile. I think our friend Karen has forgotten the first rule of being a villain: never try to corrupt a retired ethics attorney. The final act of Karen's reign came late one night, when my security cameras captured her and 2 other homeowner association board members trespassing on my property, apparently attempting to collect water samples or more likely contaminate the water to support her pollution claims. The footage clearly showed Karen pouring something from a small bottle into the lake, near where children often fished. I immediately sent the video to the police. Karen was charged with criminal trespassing and attempted environmental contamination. As she was being processed at the local police station, investigators began looking more closely at homeowner association finances during her tenure. What they found led to additional investigations into misappropriation of funds, selective enforcement of regulations based on personal relationships, and evidence that she had been using her position to drive down certain property values before her real estate connections purchased them. 2 weeks later, I invited all community residents except the current homeowner association leadership to a meeting at my home to discuss the future of the lake. The turnout was extraordinary, with nearly every household represented. I laid out my proposal. I would transfer. Ownership of the lake was transferred to a new community trust with 3 conditions. First, the homeowner association leadership would be completely changed, with time limits and open voting. Second, all homeowner association rules would be checked and changed to make sure everyone was treated equally. Third, an independent ethics team, made up of different community members, would be formed to watch over homeowner association decisions. Then, I told them something even Merrick and Samuel did not know. Many of you might not know, I said to the quiet group, but over the past month I have also been quietly buying the mortgage papers on many homes in our community from Lakeside National Bank. I waited for it to sink in, including the house owned by Karen Wellington. The room was filled with quiet talk. Using my money contacts and Samuel's help from the bank, I had bought the loan papers on almost 20% of homes here, mostly those owned by Karen and her close friends. It was fully legal but not common, and it gave me strong power. I told them I did not want to take away anyone's home or ask for full payment. I want to offer cheaper new loans to everyone, but we must fix this broken system that has been splitting us apart. The vote to remove the homeowner association leaders was almost fully agreed upon. Karen Wellington had to leave her role feeling ashamed. She now faced criminal charges for breaking in and trying to dirty the lake, And also many court cases from homeowners she had treated unfairly. Her home selling company was checked for bad actions, and within months her house was for sale, but no one wanted it because of her bad name. Safra Duskin became the new homeowner association head, promising honest work and open decisions. The lake was now called Rachel's Lake to honor my late wife, and I gave full ownership to the new trust with strong legal rules, to keep it open for everyone forever. 3 months after all this started, Celine and I held a fishing event at Rachel's Lake. Almost every family came. Kids were laughing, learning to fish. Parents were talking kindly to others who before had been divided because of Karen's rule. That evening, Celine and I sat on the dock watching the sunset. She smiled a full smile that showed her heart. "Mom would be really proud of you, Dad," she said as she leaned on me. We looked at the calm lake where people had come together for the first time in years. I thought justice is not always about winning, sometimes it is about fixing what was broken. "I think she'd be proud of both of us, kiddo," I said. 1 year later, our place had become a strong example for other neighborhoods, with many nearby places following our way of working. Karen Wellington had moved away after losing most of her money. I was asked to become mayor after James Wilson left his role due to his link with Karen, but I said no. Instead, I started a school fund in Rachel's name for kids who had lost a parent to cancer. The best way to beat a bully is not to become one, but to change the rules of the game. And if you are watching this while having trouble with your own homeowner association, always remember, never ignore the power of someone who knows the rules and waits for the perfect time to use them.